This evening, inflation has been rising for the third month continuously. We'll tell you exactly how the industry players are proposing that government should tackle especially food inflation, which contributed, according to the government statistician, one of the major contributors to the increase in the inflation rate for the month of June. Stay with me. We'll get into all of that here on Business Focus. I am Alfred Okansi. Welcome.
Research has it that malaria is one of the most deadliest diseases in this part of the world. So, whenever you're feeling cold, feverish, nausea, or fatigue, get tested. If it is malaria, do not worry. I have good news for you.
Let's all go back, malaria spread of Lonat.
Aye, malaria's remedy is Lonat. Therefore, we're gonna use Lonat to recover. You have malaria?
Yes, please.
Are you shivering?
Yes, yes.
You got chills?
Yes,
Take
yes.
Lonat.
Lonat.
First day,
Lonat.
take Lonat.
Let's all go
Second
back,
day,
Lonat.
take Lonat.
Lonat.
Third day,
Lonat.
take Lonat.
Malaria spread of Lonat.
That's all. Lonat scatter malaria. Lonat it scatter malaria.
A quality product from Blaze GVS Pharma.
The sweet scent of rose in the morning brings me so much joy. Inspired by damask rose and infused with 100% natural rose oil. Introducing new Clay Soft Perfume Beats Washing Powder. It's like bringing a garden with you everywhere with this wonderful perfume. Take a garden with you everywhere you go with Clay Soft Perfume Beats Washing Powder.
We are at that time of the year, and the much anticipated trade and exhibition fair is here. It's the Western Trade Fair, the August 2023 edition. It will be massive and engaging. Companies, small and medium scale enterprises, join the fair. Let's network and grow our business together. Date, Sunday 30th July to Sunday 6th August 2023. Time, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. each day. Venue, the Takra Demo. Activities include seminar, live band, gospel show, fashion night, and many more. The general public is invited. Entry and admission is absolutely free. For sponsorship, booking, and inquiries, kindly call or WhatsApp 0245 787 886, 0244 244 027, 0243 438 251. Partner, Takrade Mall. The Western Trade Fair is powered by Connect 97.1 FM. Connect Western Trade Fair. Egwedifu one bronya.
I've been watching you from a distance.
When the time comes for Abraham to separate himself from Lot, the Bible says Lot chose the best part of the land. Abraham did not contend with Lot because Abraham believed that the God that is serving is a God of restoration. God will give your family double restoration. God will give your husband double restoration. God will give your wife double restoration. Somebody lift up your hand and shout double restoration.
Beloved, my name is Prophet Prince Osei, the head pastor of Blessed Generation Chapel International. Watch Blessed Hour on TV3 this and every Saturday at 5:30 a.m. God bless you.
Blessed Hour shows Saturdays at 5:30 a.m. on TV3.
When the sun rises, there is hope. While this hope lingers on, the citizens look up to the government, the economy, the national development agenda, and everything in between.
On Ghana Tonight, it's our utmost priority to bring you insightful conversations on the economy, break down the biggest issues while setting the agenda for transformation and national development. The big and important stories are treated from the human interest angle, while the facts and the figures are painted with precision. So now, let's
second DDEP, bear that in mind, for the US dollar denominated bonds targeting $809 million of the denominated notes and bonds. We'll get into that shortly because that impacts on the financial sector in another way, quite apart from what we've seen, how this first round of DDEP impacted on especially the banks that posted almost 18 billion cedis worth of losses at the end of the financial year 2022. We saw that in the financial statements that the banks published. So how about this second DDEP? How is that going to impact on the financial sector? That's just on one side. Also, what we're learning is that Cocoa Board has extended an invitation to holders of its short-term debt securities, that's the Cocoa bills, to exchange that for longer-term debt securities. What does all of this mean? My colleague Michael Budu is here with the details. Michael, what does this Cocoa bills exchange, debt exchange, really mean?
Well, thank you, Alfred. First off, the Cocoa bills, just like Treasury bills, are short-term investments. They do between 92 to 182 day periods for the investment. But from what we've seen so far in a statement from CalBank issued on the 14th of July, the Bank of Ghana, the CalBank, on behalf of Cocoa Board, has announced that they are serving as arrangers for this particular domestic debt exchange program. And from what they are saying, the total bill of about 7.93 billion Ghana cedis worth of bonds held, Cocoa bills, will have to be traded. And obviously, like every other domestic debt exchange program, this is also voluntary. And they are saying that they are asking all holders of these bills to voluntarily participate in this exchange program. And basically, the holders will be asked to split their bills from their traditional 182 to about 4-year period. So now that means that it's transitioning from a short-term investment now to a long-term one. And obviously, it will come with some losses because if you're expecting, you will be now trading it at a lower rate. Yeah, so that's basically what this is happening now. It means that the bonds will now mature over a 5-year period, 2024, 2025, 2026, up to 2028, as compared to the original period where you were doing between 92 and 182 day bills. And this will definitely come with some losses, Alfred.
Exactly. And I mean, because if I have put my money in there and invested in Cocoa bills and I'm expecting returns in after 182 days, and now I would have to wait for 4 to 5 years.
Yes.
That's the time value of money.
Exactly.
Lost.
Exactly.
And we have some data to that effect, is there not?
Yes. And as you can see here on the slides that we have put together, originally the 182 bills would have been half year. And originally, if you had gotten it at the current rate at which it would have gone, this is how much it would have been worth today.
That's about 15 billion.
Yeah, almost 15 billion. But then with the current rate that it's going to go for and the period with which you would be getting from the investment, it would have dropped down by about 5 million. Wow. So that's the loss that you'll be experiencing on your 182 bill, Cocoa bill from Cocoa Board, based on the loss that is happening with the DDEP, as you can see from here.
Interesting. So, so this net present value loss of almost what? A little over 5.5 billion.
5.5 billion, actually. That's what you'll be losing
that's huge.
That's the total loss on the bonds, the Cocoa bills that have been issued for that 182 year period, Alfred.
And I see that the notes there that the interest on the 182-day Treasury bills of 265 was used.
Exactly.
As a discount.
Exactly. And and at a 12%, obviously, rate, that's based on the what's it called, the domestic debt exchange program. Obviously, you are making some significant losses over there. And I'm sure this is a concern for a lot of people who have put their money in Cocoa bills expecting to make some returns. Talk about, obviously, the present value loss, the opportunity cost element of all of this. And that means that, well, you should be preparing to get some major hits. And obviously, to beyond this, you won't be getting your money anytime soon, because if you're expecting to get it in 182 days, now you should be projecting towards 4 to basically 5 years, because of the new domestic debt exchange program that is taking place with the Cocoa bills.
And they say it's voluntary, but at least with what we saw in the first round of the DDEP, it is almost compulsory, is it not? I mean, because of the attendant effect of you not signing on to
exactly, and that's the
debt exchange program.
That's the risk associated with this. And if you look at the statement from issued by CalBank, Cocoa bill holders have up till 31st of April, 4 p.m. to subscribe to this what's it called, to tender in their bonds, their bills to undertake the domestic debt exchange program or risk whatever comes out of it. That is the risk of losing the actual value of your bonds. That's if you're not able to partake in this particular domestic debt exchange program during the period that they have given you to be part of it. Alfred.
I see. Now, but you see, let's stay a bit further on this, okay. Michael, because of the impact that you talk about.
Exactly.
Right? And who is going to bear this net present value loss of over 5.5 billion cedis that we're talking about. Professor Peter Kortey is the director of the Institute for Statistical, Social and Economic Research, ISE, at the University of Ghana, Legon. He's joining us, and also Professor John Gachi, who's the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School, is also going to be joining us shortly. But Professor Peter Kortey, thank you so much for joining us here on Business Focus. Now, the domestic debt exchange program, we've seen the second round of the DDEP as well, and all the impacts that we're seeing. How is this going to especially impact on the bondholders? I mean, those who have invested in these cocoa bills, for instance. Help us understand the quantum of loss that they're going to have to deal with.
Well, I don't know how much interest, that information was not given, how much interest they were earning, but we know that the maturity is going to be extended, and even there's a clause. The government has the right to extend the clause further, depending on domestic conditions. But for those that are going to mature in 2027, interest of 2.755%, and those in 2028, annual interest of 3.75 or so. So certainly, if one can use how much we pay on the Euro bonds, assuming the interest on these bonds are around 7%, for example, and they are going to earn 2.75, that tells you the margin of loss that they're going to suffer. But having said that, I think it will inure to all of us our benefit. What is the alternative? The alternative is for government to default completely because it hasn't got the resources. So some amount of haircuts is important. Perhaps the investors could look at this and take it. But the foreign investors are also watching closely to see how much the local investors take it. Let's bear in mind that U.S. interest rate is in June was 3%. So if you take an interest, a haircut of interest of about 2.75 or 3.75, and the loss is not too significant. At least whatever you have is able to interest is able to cover inflation, except that you're not getting enough returns on your investment. But it's a sacrifice we will have to make. But going forward, I think we've learned our bitter lessons, and to government and to everybody, this debt exchange program has brought about some bitter lessons in terms of ensuring fiscal responsibility, ensuring that we cut our coat according to our cloth. So government would have to ensure and assure Ghanaians that going forward, this will not happen in the immediate future, that going forward, it is going to spend prudently, that going forward, we'll have to be fiscally responsible, avoid waste, avoid corruption, and ensure value for money in our spending. I'm sure that if that is in place, Ghanaians will always rally behind government to achieve the developmental goal.
I see, but you see, that's the point that I want us to dwell on. So you're saying that this DDEP has presented some lessons, but based on your own analysis, has government demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that it has actually learnt and cutting down on this waste, corruption, etc. that you talk about? The lessons associated with this second round of the DDEP that you're talking about?
Well, we've seen some, I mean, if you look at the Public Accounts Committee and even the way auditors are also trying to ensure that people who infractions are picked on, and there's some commitment, but you see Sweetness of the pudding is in the eating, and that's why for me the media review is very critical. We want to see how much commitment, the outcome of the commitment that has been put out there. The numbers will show. Once clearly we get the numbers, then we can say or see the extent to which government is committed to cutting down on.
Well, so Professor Peter Kortey, stay with me, please. Because of the issues that you talk about the impact of the DDP and matters arising. And we see also that apart from the cocoa bills that are going to be exchanged and the net present value loss of about over 5.5 billion, as Michael, you indicated.
Yeah.
We're also seeing that the dollar-denominated debts, that's domestic debt, would also be impacted by this second round of the DDP. Tell us more. What do we
Exactly. You know, government is as much as possible trying to reduce its debt as part of the whole IMF conversation. We've gone through a first phase, but still the figure is still high. And so they have to, as much as possible, reduce their debt. So they are looking at the cocoa bills and then the dollar bills as well. So according to the government, the invitation to exchange is an arrangement through which holders of eligible bonds will submit their holdings of eligible bonds governed by Ghanaian law and denominated in US dollars for new benchmark Government of Ghana bonds denominated in US dollars with the same aggregate principal amount plus applicable capitalized, accrued, and unpaid interest. Now, I'll flip this and then we'll continue on the statement the government issued with regards to the dollar-denominated bonds. You know, as all part of meeting the IMF requirements, ensuring that we are cutting down on our debts and, yeah, preparing to get the second, the second allocation from the IMF as part of the bailout program, and which have in the aggregate a lower average coupon and extended average maturity than the eligible bonds. Now, I'll show you basically the schedule there for the various bondholders that will be affected. And the total amount, as you can see on your screen, is about $808 million. And these are the people, the schedule for those who will be affected by this particular DDEP that those with dollar bonds will be experiencing as part of government's efforts towards meeting the IMF conditionalities for the second tranche of the bailout program, Alfred.
Great stuff, Michael. Thank you so much. Now it gives us, at least we know the breakdown, the details of what this almost $809 million that is up for restructuring under the second round of the domestic debt exchange program release. Professor John Gachi is joining us as well. He's the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School. Professor Gachi, thank you so much for joining us here on Business Focus. So we've seen the numbers, right? And what we saw with the impact of the first DDEP, for instance, on the financial sector, we saw the banks post cumulatively a little over $1.4 billion of loss, translating into about almost 17 billion cedis as at the end of 2022. Now, this second round of DDEP, both on this dollar-denominated local debt and also the cocoa bills, how is it going to impact on the financial sector as we have it now?
Well, the impact will be the same. It will erode the profit prospect of the banks. It will deny the owners of the banks from their share of the profit. It will bring about uncertainty in terms of cash flow, because other condition is that those who are holding these bonds, the government has a right to revise even the terms as we go along. So that defines uncertainty for their cash flow. It put pressure on them in terms of profit making. Definitely, the losses that they are making will be deeper than it used to be. So that is what is expected. And of course, some of these things also has a repercussion on the capital of the bank and the liquidity position. And we need to also appreciate that when you look at the terrain so far, you will see that the banks, one way or the other, they are on the one hand with the regulator, and the customers and creditors are on the other hand. So all these things we're talking about, with time, the banks will be able to recoup and solve their loss-making position with time. And what that means is that the burden is being shifted to those who transact with the financial institution.
What the concern is it not?
And again, the cocoa bill is very significant because that gives some respite to the sector. The sector will now plan to pay off the loan with a longer maturity period, and then reorganize themselves in the sector so that they can concentrate on the things that regard cocoa production in the country.
You see, and that's where the concern is, that the first point you make, that with this second DDEP, what we're going to see is that the burden of this loss is going to be shifted on those who are doing business with these financial institutions. You're talking about the private sector and so on. Already, the private sector is also crying about the increase in interest on loans, the costly credits that they have to deal with. And we're depending on the private sector to expand, to also lead the process of recovery from this impact of the cleanup and so on, and with the COVID-19 and others. So what do you predict could happen in the next 6 months ahead of us if this effect we're talking about goes through?
Well, the private sector will continue to struggle. The entire business sector will continue to struggle, because what is most priority for government is to fix its balance sheet. Now the focus is not about making available cheap credit to the private sector to perform to enhance growth. Now the whole focus is on to ensure fiscal balances for government books. So when it happens like that, the problem will be that with the private sector, who we all believe is the engine of growth, will not perform its active part of the equation. So that is what we are going to go through. And again, if you look at even the banks lending, the treasury bill, for example, is always for the government. So the lending portfolio that they have, I believe much is still going to government through treasury bill. So I think that there's a distortion in the entire financial market, and this will go on for some long time before we see some reversal.
So let's go to the cocoa bills now, which up for another form of domestic debt exchange. There's some haircut, correct, that the investors in the cocoa bills would have to take. You can say same for the holders of these dollar-denominated bonds, is it not?
Yeah, that is exactly so. But let us not forget that the debt exchange program is between the government of Ghana and the bondholders. And insofar as the bondholders have agreed that they want to undertake this exercise with government, we, the onlookers, have very little to say, even though we know the repercussion on them in terms of losses in interest, losses in principal, and the extension of maturity. But the underlying factor is that it is between government and those who are holding the bond, including some of the banks. So they have agreed, therefore, all the repercussion will go with it.
I see. Now, how about the a little over 5.5 billion net present value, for instance, on the cocoa bills? We'll put that on the screen shortly, the one related to the cocoa bills. Now, who is going to take up this loss that has been captured in the details as given by Cocoa Board and CoBank?
Yes, as I said, the deal is between the bondholders and the government. And the bondholders are the one going to lose that amount cumulatively. And then whatever effect it will have on their book, it will. And then whatever benefit it gives to government in terms of, making it debt management better will also come on board to the economy. But the point I'm making is that that loss is going to the bondholders.
Have there been any...
And the bondholders have assessed the implication of that on them already. So that's what I said. Do you think that a bank will just say that you enter into some transaction that will be losing millions of dollars of money, and they will not find a way of getting some back? Of course, they will do that. I think you are aware that just after the debt exchange program, people started complaining about certain charges that they are receiving from the banks. Some interests are supposed to be floating interest rate. Those things have been activated, all in the effort of trying to give some respite to the banks, which are bondholders. So definitely, the public, the households, and the businesses and the bondholders, and the households are the main, burden takers of this exercise.
See, now I see that the only intervention from what we do know to help the financial sector, I'm talking about the banks and others who participated in this domestic debt exchange program, is the announcement of this financial stability fund of 15 billion cedis to cushion the effect on them. In the first year of this DDEP impact, that's 2022, we've seen the banks post a loss of almost 18 billion cedis. That's even more than the 15 billion cushioning for them. Then there is this second round of the DDEP, which you have also announced and just said that is going to impact on the financial sector and the banks heavily as well. So is there any fallback for them, the banks, with all this? Because it appears this financial stability fund is not going to do much, at least from what we are seeing.
Well, I think it is worrying that the Financial Stability Fund has not been set up. We have had so many discussions about this, but in reality is that it has not been set up. Now, it is very difficult to see managers of the economy and regulators who know that this exercise has a telling effect on the banks, and look on not to ensure that they activate the processes to set up this fund to help the banks to come out of some of the difficulties they go through. That is not encouraging enough. And then the conditions attached to the stability this fund is also not in the interest of banking. So for me, number one, even what you are providing is not correct, but you have not even set up that to provide those who are interested in coming to take that to support their activities. So that is where we are now. So it's as if government is only interested in taking from the people to solve its problem, but it doesn't know that it's also creating deeper problem for businesses in the country.
I see. Now, I've just had confirmation that a lot of the banks are actually holders of the cocoa bills, Professor Gachi. So that confirms the point that you made earlier.
Yes, I think we have made that point already. Mm-hmm. They are holders of the cocoa bills, and for that matter, they are bond holders. So any losses will go to them. But as I said, they will find a way to recoup some of them through their activities with the creditors that they deal with from time to time.
So how about those?
So that thing we are calling burden sharing is actually burden shifting that is happening in this whole exercise.
How about those who fail to or decide not to sign on to this? As they've stated, this is voluntary with a lot of conditions. What are the repercussions for them?
Well, that is a technical matter. We know ordinarily that if you don't take part in a debt exchange program, it means you don't want to take part because it's voluntary. And therefore, your situation should be respected and on the basis of the old terms of the bonds. That's what it means. So there's no definition that if you don't take part in the bond, in the debt exchange program, that it means that you shouldn't be paid. No.
Professor Gachi, appreciate your time on this. Thank you so much, sir. Professor John Gachi is the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School. Stay with me here on Business School Focus. We'll be back shortly. After this quick break, we get into inflation and matters arising because one of the major factors that led into the increase in inflation figures for the month of June is food inflation. We'll have a conversation on that. Stay with me. We'll be back shortly.
We're going to demonstrate to you the superior properties of Flamingo paint as compared to other paint brands on the market. We take equal quantities of Flamingo paint and this ordinary paint. We then dilute them with water. And now let the test begin. The gentleman on the left is going to apply the ordinary paint and the gentleman on my right will use the Flamingo superior paint. As you can clearly see, Flamingo has the obvious better hiding. Furthermore, Flamingo has painted a much larger area. You know, one bucket of Flamingo paint is equal to several buckets of any other paint brand on the market. Flamingo paint is made with superior formulation to give superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage. Flamingo paint, simply superior.
Has it that malaria is one of the most deadliest diseases in this part of the world. So, whenever you're feeling cold, feverish, nausea, or fatigue, get tested. If it is malaria, do not worry. I have good news for you.
Let's all go back, malaria scared of Lonat.
Aye, malaria's remedy is Lonat. Therefore, we're gonna use Lonat to recover. You have malaria?
Yes, please.
Are you shivering?
Yes, yes.
You got chills?
Yes,
Take
yes.
Lonat.
Lonat.
First day,
Lonat.
take Lonat.
Let's all
Second
go
day,
back, Lonat.
take Lonat.
Lonat.
Third day,
Lonat.
take Lonat.
Malaria scared of Lonat.
That's all. Lonat scatter malaria. Lonat it scatter malaria.
A quality product from Blaze GVS Pharma.
Welcome back to Business Focus. You may have been paying more than double or triple the prices of some commonly used household items, including fresh tomatoes and garden eggs. That's because for June 2023, some commonly used items have featured in the top 20 items, which I'll show to you shortly, with the highest inflation rates, with some above 100%. My colleague Menua Fo has been tracking the price changes and has come through with this report.
A month ago, 5 was like 10 cedis. Garden eggs, 5, 10 cedis.
Inflation rate for June 2023 went up to 42.5%, according to the Ghana Statistical Service. Now I'm going to walk you through the top 20 items with the highest rates of inflation. So you would find items which are very common in every individual's basket. Shelled groundnut leads the chart with a rate of 125.7%, followed by tea bags, dog meat, palm oil, and we could go on. Now pay attention to this. Most of these items, groundnut, palm oil, sunflower cooking oil and others, have been featuring in the top listed items with the highest inflation rate for months. But for June, we've seen some new items on the list. Garden eggs saw a year-on-year inflation of 81.2%, placing it at number 9. And fresh tomatoes also made it to the top 20. It is the 18th listed item with an inflation rate of 71.8%. Well, let's engage the traders and find out how they are coping with the inflation levels.
It's too expensive, but I know how to do the customer. The customer will not leave me and go.
I might say it was expensive because people were complaining. They couldn't buy a lot because the big cup is expensive.
We were incurring losses all the time. Customers complain bitterly about the prices, but they still buy.
Note that food inflation appeared to be the main driver of inflation for the month, indicating that prices of food items went up more than other items that were considered in the inflation basket.
Well, to be honest, you can be the best judges because you go to the market. And joining me in studio is Dr. Charles Nyaba, Executive Director of the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana. Dr. Nyaba, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Alfred.
On Business Focus. Now, let me show you this, and we'll put it on the screen right now. This is the rate of increase we've seen from 51.8% in May. We're talking about 54.2% in June. And one of the major drivers of this increase between May and June is food. Now, these are the top 20 items, food items that pushed the inflation up. We've seen, Dr. Nyaba, confirm this for me, that we were importing about $99.5 million worth of tomatoes from Burkina Faso in 2019. Now it's shot up to $400 million as at 2022, correct?
Yeah, you are right. You see, the issue with the tomatoes is peculiar.
Why?
And we have been warning that if we don't put measures in place, this will continue. You know, last year, I indicated clearly that Ghana, we don't produce tomatoes any longer.
We don't produce tomatoes in Ghana?
Any longer. You see, the areas where we used to produce tomatoes, that reduces our dependence on Burkina and Togo. In Upper East, Akumadan, and then when you come to the southern belt, we are talking about Adan. All these areas stopped producing tomatoes because of several reasons.
What are those?
When you take that of the Upper East, the leading supplier of tomatoes some years ago was the Tono project. If you remember, in 2008, during Kofo's regime, the Northern Star Tomato Factory was revamped, and farmers were promised that if they produce, all their tomatoes will be bought. In that year, I remember my uncle went in for loan. He produced 10 acres of tomatoes. When the time came, the factory could not even take 10%. Most farmers committed suicide because they produce tomatoes is not something that a farmer can preserve. So since then, those farmers engage in producing rice, maize, soybeans, and others. Now, in last year, we continued to import tomatoes from Burkina Faso. But because of the Boko Haram insurgents, many drivers were actually killed in their attempt to bring tomatoes to Ghana.
I see.
And then Burkina Faso, also later part of the year, blocked their borders. So our women could not go there to bring tomatoes. So all these factors actually contributed to increase in tomatoes prices in Ghana.
And in fact, this is just what you're saying based on the information we have from the importers of tomatoes. It's that 90% of fresh tomatoes consumed are imported from Burkina Faso. 90%. And the national consumption demand of tomatoes is in excess of 800,000 metric tons per annum.
You are right.
How much of this is produced locally? This over 800,000 tons that we consume tomatoes.
Yeah. So, yeah, so what we were proposing as a solution to these problems is irrigation. Because you cannot produce tomato under any condition. And last year, I think most of us were hoping that the dams that government promised to create was going to be a solution to the problem.
The One Village, One Dam.
The One Village, One Dam.
What's the state of affairs with that?
So there were many farmers, when they started constructing the dams, they actually prepared their fields. Some did their nurseries. Others actually transplanted. In the midway, the dams got dried up. Some of the dams could not actually contain the waters.
The dams dried up?
They dried up completely. We went to a place called Kajolo in the Upper East region. The women actually invested all their monies in nursing tomatoes. And according to them, when the tomatoes were about fruiting, the community came and said nobody should use the dam because the dam was drying and they needed to reserve the water for their livestock. Okay, so these were some of the problems. And I think SARI has been doing a lot of research on tomatoes varieties that can match the Burkina base. But I think we've not, actually the uptake is very poor due to several factors that have not put into consideration before coming up with those varieties. Because just like I said earlier on, tomatoes is a special crop that needs special attention.
I see.
In terms of the land preparation, in terms of water, in terms of fertilizers, in terms of disease and pest control. All these factors have not put in place. As we speak last year, I think I have to go down there to actually intervene for some farmers who produce tomatoes. And according to them, they use all their life investment to go into the tomatoes.
I see.
And they got nothing.
So even with the situation in Burkina Faso, the 2 coup d'etats last year and so on, which you said led to some of the drivers being killed.
Yeah.
And meaning that traders could not go there to bring in tomatoes. It created some artificial scarcity, I remember.
Yeah.
And that led to the increase in the price of tomatoes.
So, yeah, I think that's the major factor. The other factor has to also do with increase in inputs, increase in cost of production in Ghana. So if you have a crop that actually requires too much attention like tomatoes, where you need to put too much inputs like fertilizers, you need to buy pesticides, you need to buy weedicide, farmers will opt for crops that do not require too much attention or too much investment.
So what are they shifting to now?
So if you take the middle belt, like Akumada, I mentioned Techiman, Kintampo, in Kranza area, majority of farmers, over 80%, are into cashew production.
Cashew?
Cashew. And no, cashew is industrial crop. We don't consume cashew in Ghana. So we might increase our exportation of cashew, but it has implications on the food crops like maize, the garden eggs we're talking about. We get about 60% of our garden eggs from the middle belt. You go to all those areas, they stop producing garden eggs. So all these are factors that are impacting on the local supply of those vegetables that we are seeing the inflation rising.
What are the specific interventions you expect of government in this mid-year budget review next week to address not just the tomato situation, but the challenges you're facing in the sector?
Yeah, so you look at last year, I think the origin of all what we're facing is from 2021 and 2022. 2022, for instance, we were promised that government was going to continue the fertilizer subsidy program. Prior to the delivery, the subsidy was virtually non-existent because the difference between the subsidized fertilizer and that of the open market was just 10 cedis.
10 cedis?
Yes. And if you ask any farmer, they will tell you, last year's subsidized fertilizer was not actual fertilizer. The quality was so poor, the supply was low, prices were high, so majority of farmers actually depended on the open market fertilizer. So what we expect, and this year, the new minister reviewed the fertilizer subsidy program, so we are told there is no subsidy. Farmers have already prepared their lands. Some have planted, others have bought their own fertilizers. The new minister is introducing what we call credit guarantee system. And that is what we've all been waiting for. Now, as an individual farmer, to get credit from bank is very difficult. Apart from the bureaucracies, the interest rate, the collateral requirement, before you get those credit. It's not small thing. So we're expecting that there will be speedy execution of this credit grant. We all welcome it because we think it's an efficient way of farmers as well going out to do their own investment and select the kind of service provider that they need. But as we speak, we don't really know the state of the credit guarantee.
So you want that to be captured in the media budget review?
Yes.
What next?
The next is, just like I said, irrigation is the way to go. Because very soon we'll be entering into the minor season. And with the minor season, because of the changes in the rainfall pattern, October, November, there wouldn't be rains any longer. So if you don't focus investment in irrigation, if you can create new ones, at least the existing one, we expect that those dams are desilted. The defunct One Village, One Dams, some of the dams, a few of them, can still be maintained. So we expect that there should be urgent allocation of funds to get those dams